Hi, my name is Brianna Devellano, and I'm going to be reviewing my assignment 7.1 with my analysis of J. Nolan Community Services, which is a nonprofit based in Mission Hills, California, which was established in 1975. We support people with disabilities, and I'm going to be analyzing the supported living department, which is the department that I personally work in. The main problem that I'm going to be identifying is high levels of burnout and high levels of turnover rates and increased levels of emotional and compassion fatigue amongst direct support professionals. So of course, these lead to many challenges, can lead to lower employee morale, lower motivation, lower performances, long-term instability in circles. So when identifying the structural frame, one of the quotes that I found in here, which is a statistic, was that in 2020, the average nonprofit employee turnover rate was 43.1%, which is 10% higher than the national average turnover rate. So a lot of things can contribute to these turnover rates and to these burnouts, especially when you're working in a disability services field or a caregiving field, where these DSPs are working on the ground with these individuals with very complex cases. Unfortunately, for some staff, when they are hit with staff shortages within the circle, they are to take on more responsibility. So, for example, Generally, shifts are broken up into 8 hours. So Monday through Friday, we have 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., and we have an overnight, which is 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Typically, in a well-functioning circle, you have people who work each of those 8-hour shifts. So somebody will work in the morning, somebody afternoon, somebody at night, and these are all different people. For the weekend shift is 48 hours in total. You show up Friday night at 11 p.m. and you stay until 11 p.m. Sunday. So, and that usually has another staff that does not work during the week. However, because we are in a field that has high burnout levels and turnover rate, we unfortunately have to put more responsibility on some DSPs. So instead of doing an 8-hour shift, some may have to increase their hours and do a 9-hour, 10-hour, sometimes 16-hour, sometimes 24-hour shift in order to make up for the staffing that is lost. Obviously, that's very tough on a person, especially when the case is very complex. This can lead DSPs to feel extremely burnt out, especially when the case is very complex. There's a lot of escalations, there's a lot of emergencies or different things that pop up that aren't typical. This can really affect direct support professionals, especially those who have to take on those hours and more hours for that. Of course, one of the ways that leadership can support is by providing that relief and assistance for different shifts. So for example, I have an individual who's been hospitalized since September 2025. I may have mentioned them before. My staff work tirelessly in the hospital every day. Every single day they work with this individual whose case is extremely complex. Because of the severity of the case, because of the environment, and because of how long it's been that we've been supporting this person in this environment, unfortunately, my staff are very, very burnt out. I do my best to check in with them. However, in doing this analysis, I realized that I might be able to find a better approach. I do find a better approach. So some of the ways that I kind of implemented this structural wise is identifying that as a leader, I can relieve some pressures. So for example, I have another case that is a very, very difficult case. Luckily, we are fully staffed for now, knock on wood, in that circle. However, on times that we aren't because people go on vacation or people are sick or whatever happens, sometimes it does lean on supervisors to take over those shifts. However, as I mentioned in this, us supervisors, when we take over shifts, we do not get paid for that. We do not get paid for the hours. We do not get paid for anything. 2 summers ago, I had to cover a lot of shifts and I was working about 16 hours a day. sometimes 18. And I didn't get paid for any of it because I'm on salary. So I use money as the incentive sometimes because I never want to take money away from a DSP who needs it. So I will always try to extend that offer. And if my staff in this circle are becoming fatigued, and they come to me and they tell me that, I can find outside coverage. I can find maybe someone in the circle also wants to take those hours. You never know. But either way, I personally try not to take over shifts because I feel like there's a DSP out there who would benefit from the money of it. However, of course, things happen. One of the ways that I realize I can provide more incentive to promote work ethic and performance can be the system called AwardCo. So AwardCo is a point system that leaders in the agency can identify, recognize, shout out someone who is like doing really well in the agency, and these points accumulate to like dollars. So for example, if I got awarded 30 points, then I would technically have $30 to turn into a gift card. So this is one of the incentives that I wrote structurally. Of course, being a supervisor and providing one-on-one support, doing check-ins. However, that would more fall under the human resource frame. So a lot of responsibility goes on these support professionals, and it's really easy to become fatigued, both emotionally, mentally, physically. Compassion fatigue is very, very common. Compassion fatigue happens by somebody witnessing or having a secondary traumatic response to something else that is happening that is traumatic. So for example, my staff that are working in the hospital, they have really experienced compassion fatigue and secondary trauma by witnessing their supported person who they've been with for 20 some odd years almost die and go through cardiac arrest, which caused a lot of trauma on my staff, specifically the staff that was with them the day that it happened. One of the ways that I personally worked towards supporting this person, which is something that I also wrote down in here, is providing a helping hand. So sometimes being able to communicate, hey, I noticed that this is what happened. If you are not comfortable, if you need support in areas, let me know. I always try to provide free resources. So our agency, J. Nolan, provides a employee benefit system where DSPs can have 1 to 3 therapy sessions. Sorry, that's my cat. 1 to 3 therapy sessions free of charge per year. I always send that out to my DSPs when I can sense that they're struggling. I also offer different support, so coming, being there for the day or for a couple of hours to support the person, really having transparent and open communication with these DSPs, and letting them not feel as alone in their work days or unsupported, which it can happen sometimes, especially when you're working one-on-one with these individuals. Politically, nonprofits are run because of the government, essentially. So because nonprofits rely heavily on government supplementation, in order to sustain, we need the government. Agencies like J. Nolan Community Services is directly tied to regional centers, and those regional centers are connected to governmental funding and Social Security. The regional centers are the ones that make the budgets for the agency as well, and make budgets for the person supported. So they provide resources to their people, which could be a referral to us. If we deem that they are fit for our agency, we go through the entire process, and everything is sent back to them. So financially and more recently, administratively and policy-wise, Regional Center has been very, very involved. As of 2026, we are being audited by one of the local regional centers to ensure that we are all on the same page. I took a look into J. Nolan's 990 and their overall money resources. J. Nolan and their 990 in 2024 reported approximately 744 employees and $33 million of expenses. So these could be used for anything. They're used for person served, they're used for activities, but they're also used for salaries and wages. Now, currently at J. Nolan, DSPs make anywhere between $20 and $21. And they will work anywhere between 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, or possibly more. Although compensation is like a tinge around minimum wage, a tinge, I don't even know what that means. It most likely does not feel balanced in comparison to how much work there is. So that can lead staff to burn out, to feel that there is no incentive, to feel as though they are not supported. They don't feel like their work is going noticed. Some of the ways that we can implement change in that, of course, is, like I mentioned, the award co points. That can be financial incentive. One of the other ways is that Regional Center has been creating change amongst DSPs is documentation. So we do not have a universal documentation system at J. Nolan yet, but documentation is required as of regional centers, and this documentation has to abide by certain laws. Now, understand that staff that have been here for years and years and years haven't really had to do documentation until the last 5 years, if that. So a lot of staff are very resistant to this change, and they feel that it is negatively impeding their workflow. And they are pretty resistant sometimes. So as a leader, I try to explain very clearly why it's needed, why it's important, how to best accommodate for the persons doing documentation. So for example, I'll take 2 circles as an example. My staff in one circle, their first language is not English. So therefore, when I provide them stuff to write things down, write sentences, type anything, it doesn't really come out accurate or sometimes understandable, especially for proper documentation. So in order to accommodate for them, I provide them a checklist that has basically a yes or no. Did this person escalate today? Yes or no? Did this? And then it's the same questions every time so that they're able to document what happened, but not have to stress out over the English portion. And so that's something that I did not write about in here, but I'm remembering now. So at least it's in this. Anyways, lastly, the symbolic frame. Really, J. Nolan prides itself on being a person-served agency. So our mission statement really supports for overall supporting individualism and independence and autonomy. However, because we are so person-served first, DSPs can feel a little bit unnoticed, or a lot of bit unnoticed. It is important to learn from these served people, of course, and take into consideration that we cater everything to these people. But sometimes direct support professionals may not understand how to adapt to these situations, especially within cultural differences. So all of our people that come to us, we don't change anything about them. They come to us, we learn about them. So there are times where staff will be paired up with people who are of different background, culture, customs, and our DSPs are to adapt to their supported persons, or are expected to. However, something that I have noticed is within the interview process, a lot of DSPs will say, yeah, I'm comfortable, I'm good with that. I'm all right with that. Yeah, I'm Catholic, but I'll go to temple. Or like, yeah, I don't typically go to strip clubs, but since that guy wants to do it, I'll go with him. However, once it gets to actually happening and that action taking place, some DSPs are resistant, and some set those boundaries and say, hey, I don't feel comfortable doing this. Of course, that's not exactly what we do. So sometimes staff do have to push aside their customs, and if they're unable to, then we can find them another place with somebody who has similar customs or culture, or just don't work at the agency anymore. So as a leader, I really try to identify and support people's cultural backgrounds. I also take into consideration age. As a young supervisor, I'm only 27, and I have staff that have been working here for as long as I've been alive, if not longer. And it can be really, really hard sometimes to understand my staff, one, because majority of my staff are deaf, and I am not, so I have to learn and adapt and understand their culture and customs in order to be a better leader to them. But also learning and adapting to our supported person, and understanding that there's so much variety and differences, and that the direct support professionals that come to us with these different cultures and customs, they bring a different perspective and their own experience, which can be so beneficial in collaboration. So I think as a leader, really pushing for acknowledging the differences and being forthcoming about it, asking questions, learning more about it. But also, as I mentioned, with age, different motivators or different motivations motivate different ages, if that makes sense. In one of the past classes that we took for this degree, I did a study on motivation and age gaps, and it was found that the older generations are motivated by things that younger generations are not motivated by. So typically older generations can be more motivated by financial incentives, while younger generations can be motivated more, I'm so sorry that happened, can be motivated more by personal engagement, positive reinforcement, praise. And so this is something that really has to be taken into consideration, especially as a leader, covering so many different cultures and customs and bases. Now that I've gone through all that, and I've gone way over the time limit, overall, I've kind of tipped on some of the ways that as a leader, I can at least implement change. After doing this, I kind of understand a little bit better how to approach these changes, especially when using the adaptive leadership theory. So really identifying that these challenges impede the growth, and understanding that as a leader, I need to adapt and work towards increasing positive experiences and changing beliefs and the workplace culture, which can lower the amount of burnout, because staff will feel more comfortable with their leaders to communicate, to understand, to ask for help, to ask for support. And then my change initiative is basically, I love me a good satisfaction survey. I love post and pre surveys. So in the first month, I would want to provide a satisfaction survey to see where the levels are currently of DSPs and their satisfaction at their job. Then from there, take the feedback and implement the change in those areas. The other thing is, once the year is over, having another post test, so seeing if the changes that were implemented throughout the years make a difference. The other thing is, I would really like exit data on employees that leave the agency. So if you worked at the agency anywhere between 1 to 6 months and you no longer want to work at this agency, why? And some people can just be like, oh, I found a different job. But some people will be honest and say, I didn't feel supported. I didn't feel like safe. I didn't feel comfortable. Taking those things and the honesty from those who have actively been in those positions and left those positions, getting that feedback can help for future retention, because now you can identify, okay, these are the reasons why these people were unsatisfied in their workplace. Here's how we can fix it. Yeah, I really learned a lot from doing this, and I think I kind of now understand more of how to make a proper approach with my staff and be culturally sensitive, but also analytical. I think keeping the data on employee satisfaction, really communicating, being open, transparent, allowing staff to feel heard and collaborate with them, that really improves overall satisfaction of the job. And catching burnout before it happens is also really important. So myself as a leader, identifying those small nuances that, what's it called? The small things that I can identify as a leader as going towards burnout. Does that make sense? I'm not quite sure. I'm struggling. Point is, I learned a lot, and I think I'm gonna take some of this back. Not some of it. I'm probably gonna take all of it back with me, especially the action plan with some of my circles, because I can see the burnout levels increasing because of workload increasing. So yeah, I think this taught me how to be a better leader. I know I went over page requirements and time requirements, but I talk a lot and I'm very passionate about this stuff. So yeah. Thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.